Hey everybody, it's Megan Fox with pgmedia.com, and a bunch of you sent me this article that's in Variety about Kim Cattrall and finding power in saying no. So I'm going to read this to you today. If you have any chores you need to get done, now is the time. There's probably plenty of time to at least vacuum a room or perhaps dust one. Because this is a pretty lengthy article. It is by Raman Setuda, and it is in Variety magazine. Now, if you recall from the Johnny Depp trial, Variety is the Hollywood magazine. This is the magazine that all of Hollywood looks to for their information. It is very important. It's an important industry magazine, and so this will have far-reaching, reach, I guess I should say. Don't forget to check out the merch store. There's plenty of new stuff in there, including Johnny Depp Mega Pint material and merch, which you will really like. Mega Pints, mugs, wine coolers, t-shirts. It says, "Isn't happy hour anytime?" So check it out. Support the show. Those are very popular, by the way. A lot of people are buying them, and I'm so happy that you're enjoying them. All right. And just like that, Kim Cattrall found power in saying no. Samantha Jones seemed to have it all, except a happy ending. For 6 seasons and 2 movies, Kim Cattrall put the sex in Sex and the City, while adding a dose of glamour and surprising relatability to boot. Samantha came complete with her own company, trendy apartment, runway wardrobe, and movie star boyfriend. But it was Cattrall who gave the character desire and soul. That's why some fans were so disappointed to see her vanish from the franchise after being ill-used in 2010's Sex and the City 2. After exiting the series of her own accord, Cattrall says that she had no advance warning before news broke in late 2020 that Carrie, Sarah Jessica Parker, Miranda, and Charlotte had decided to reunite for HBO Max's In Just Like That. So they didn't even tell her. The streaming reboot premiered in December of 2021 and set Twitter afire without Samantha. Of course, Cattrall had made it abundantly clear in interviews that she was done playing Samantha, and in 2017, she turned down a script for the third Sex and the City movie. Chunks of that story, which centered on Mr. Big's sudden death and Carrie's grieving process, provided the seeds of inspiration for And Just Like That. But not everything made it into the show. In the film that didn't happen, Samantha's storyline reportedly revolved around her receiving unwanted dick pics from Brady, Miranda's 14-year-old son. No! Child. Oh, OMG. I shouldn't have said that. Damn it. Now I have to go back and edit that out. Child, you know what? I guess I should say. Wow, I cannot believe Michael Patrick King, or maybe I should say I do believe Michael Patrick King would put something like that in this show, because he clearly has no boundaries at all, especially when it comes to Brady. I mean, they made Brady older for And Just Like That than he would have been, probably to avoid that kind of criticism. But how sick is this that he planned on a storyline where Samantha receives illegal content from a minor? Wow. Could these people get any weirder? And so, after a public breakup, the infamous quartet of Sex and the City became triumvirate, with some new friends. To deal with the past, a Cattrall and Just Like That invented a subplot that depicted the disillusion of Carrie and Samantha's friendship off screen. And Samantha, who'd apparently abandoned New York for London, was reincarnated in the form of text messages to Carrie written in her character's voice. At least that's one side of the story. Since the premiere of And Just Like That, Cattrall hasn't talked about Sex and the City in public, not even to respond to rumors that she could return as Samantha. To start, that's not happening. In a wide-ranging interview for Variety's Power of Women issue, the 65-year-old actor who says she hasn't watched And Just Like That shared her thoughts on why exactly she walked away from one of TV's biggest phenomena. It's a great wisdom to know when enough is enough, Cattrall says. I also didn't want to compromise what the show was to me. The way forward seemed clear. I can't believe she hasn't watched it. Do you guys believe that? Tell me in the comments below if you believe that Kim Cattrall hasn't watched it. I find it difficult to believe she has not watched this train wreck just so that she can laugh hysterically, and know that she made the right choice. How could she not have watched it? I don't think I believe that. I think she's watched it, and I think she probably watched it with Pat Fields. This year, Cattrall's happily moved on with two new TV projects. On Hulu's How I Met Your Father, she's the future Sophie, played by Hilary Duff in flashbacks, who sips a glass of wine as she narrates the story of meeting her great love. And on Peacock's Queer as Folk, a reboot of the groundbreaking 1999 UK series, which had its own 2000 American offshoot, she is Brenda, an affluent New Orleans grandmother. On the big screen, she's starring with Robert De Niro in the Lionsgate comedy About My Father, but she says that she still feels Samantha's presence and she's appreciative that fans miss the character and mourn her absence. Back when Sex and the City premiered on HBO in 1998, Samantha was something that TV hadn't seen before, a financially empowered heroine who proudly refused to strive for marriage or children and relish sex as a man would. I think the one thing I could have never guessed going into the role of Samantha in Sex and the City was just how funny Kim could be, says Darren Star, who created the show and offered the part to Cattrall. Coming from a career in movies, Mannequin, Police Academy, she turned it down 3 times before finally accepting. She wasn't interested in a TV series, Star says. Now it's impossible to imagine the show without her. Not only did Cattrall own the character, but she changed culture, making Samantha a sex-positive, aspirational figure for a generation of women. Stop. I have to disagree with this. I don't think there was anything aspirational about Samantha's character. And I don't think she changed the culture either. I don't think the character changed the culture. I think there was maybe a small subset of women who might have looked at her as aspirational and changed their behavior based on her. But I think most women understood then and still understand now that if marriage and family is something that they want, behaving like Samantha is not the way you're going to get it. It just isn't. It's just not. It's just not. And I don't think most women want what they depicted Samantha as having, which is no stable relationship, no loving family, and simply just money and sex. I don't think that that's something most women want. And I think this was, for me, the show, it was really just more of a fantasy kind of show that was interesting as they had these 4 different characters and each one was so different. And Samantha, of course, was way over the top. The way I viewed Samantha was always more like a single gay man in New York would behave. I never viewed Samantha as a realistic female character. I didn't know anybody like that. And we were pretty crazy back then. I mean, but that was Samantha's character was taken to an extreme. I knew far more women who were the anything but girls, who would go out with lots of different guys and perhaps, make out with lots of different guys, but they wouldn't go that far. Um, and I don't think if you talk to men, they have a whole lot of experience with women like Samantha, not straight men, you know. Gay men have more of an experience with other men who behave that way, I think, but women are just just not like this. So I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I think it was more of a fantasy thing than anything. And I don't think that it changed the culture. Maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't see that happening back then. And I was in the dating scene back then. So, okay. Um, and then there's this. When she would shoot sex scenes, I would always tell her, wear your high heels. So when your legs went up in the air, we see the shoes, said Patricia Field, the show's costume designer. In person, Cattrall, who was born in Liverpool, England, and grew up in British Columbia, doesn't sound or move like Samantha. A self-described serial monogamist, she recently celebrated her 6-year anniversary with her partner, Russell Thomas. She speaks in a graceful timbre, evocative of old glamour Hollywood, as she recalls some of her favorite stage performances, including Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra. She reveals that she became a U.S. citizen in 2020, and she lost her health insurance from SAG-AFTRA during the pandemic after not working for a stretch of time. As a result, Cattrall has decided to honor the Actors Fund, the nonprofit that offers financial and health assistance to performers and behind-the-scenes crew during Variety's Power of Women dinner on May 5th. It's so filled with shame if you're not working or you're not wanted, she says. Thank God I turned 65 and went on Medicare and I have a nest egg, but that's scary how vulnerable you could be. So now we're moving into the interview part of this article. You've had a big year with 2 TV shows coming out within a few months of each other. I just saw the first 4 episodes of Queer as Folk. Cattrall says, I met Stephen Dunn, the showrunner, in London. His film, Closet Monster, have you seen it? Oh, you have to see it. And then he sent me this beautiful letter asking me to be part of Queer as Folk. And I thought, what is this going to be like? Because I didn't see the American version. I saw the American version. I only saw the British version, which was so hard-hitting at the time. The interviewer says, it's easy to forget now, but there was almost no representation of gay characters in TV or movies in the 90s and earlier. And Kim says, rarely in cinema, and even then it was so cloaked. I'm so proud to be a part of it because it's daring. There's 8 episodes in all. Do we see more of Brenda? Oh my God, she goes crazy. I had my first non-binary love scene. Oh, not another one. Come on, Kim. Was it with Che Diaz? God save us all. What is with this non-binary stuff? This is a fad. This is going to die out as quick as it came, and we're going to look back on this time and what were we thinking? Is there really that big of a call for non-binary love scenes? Come on, folks. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And for the first time in my career, I was introduced to someone who had the position on a set that I had no idea what they did. Her heading was intimacy coach. I thought, excuse me? I've never had an intimacy coach. It was fantastic. Instead of someone from the wardrobe department holding out a house coat for you when they said cut or putting a towel over you, they had this person there who'd say, okay, stop. We need this protected there. It was like a fairy godmother. On Sex and the City, the most I ever got was for Pat Field to make this, well, she called it a KC cup that would cover like a jock strap, both actors if the scene required it. Okay, so I find it shocking that Hollywood never had anyone to protect the actors during these scenes where they're required to be naked. I mean, it's incredible. And frankly, I would prefer to have less naked scenes in my entertainment. I don't know why we have to be so, I don't know why everything has to be so explicit and like pornography. And I just think it's amazing that it took till 2022 to get somebody on set whose job it is to make sure that the actors and actresses are protected and not feeling vulnerable or not being exposed or exploited. I mean, come on. But again, I have to go back to this non-binary thing because it's still nagging me. Does anybody find it strange that Kim Cattrall was in a non-binary love scene shortly after And Just Like That with Miranda and Che? It just seems all so contrived. So contrived. It's like, this is the narrative that's being pushed now. And so every single thing that's coming out of Hollywood is going to have this thing. It's just contrived. All right, moving on. It's called what? The KC Cup, Kim Cattrall, because some guys had never acted before. It was their first job. And they were nervous something might happen. But now there's a person on set every time there's an intimate scene and you're protected. It's a much safer place to be. The interviewer says, I thought I'd read that you don't want to do sex scenes anymore. Cattrall says, I don't want to be nude anymore. I'm 65. I'm in great shape, but I'm just not interested. I feel like I've filled my quota on that one. And without an intimacy coach. Well, you sure did, honey. You did fill your quota. You really did. And I will say this about Cattrall. Of every time she had one of those nude scenes, she never appeared to be uncomfortable. She's really a very good actress because if she was uncomfortable, it did not come through on film. She looked completely confident and, joyful. It never seemed like she was uncomfortable. I remember thinking at the time, wow, those scenes must be hard to film. That must be difficult. So whatever difficulty she was going through never came through, which is kind of amazing. And, she's a very good actress, far better than anybody else on that set on Sex and the City, I think. personally. How did you prepare to play Brenda? She's a real combination of a couple women I know, just with their fortitude. So I just channeled that, and also I felt for her because she was lonely. Women who have an empty nest, who have too much time, too much money, where do they go? People talk about the glass ceiling. It's a much lower ceiling for most women. She says later on in an episode, I can't tell you what happens. I'm telling you too much. But anyway, it was an eye opener. Also, to be on set with so many young actors who had seen most of the films I'd done, they were very kind and very supportive. How did you get cast in How I Met Your Father? Well, it came out of left field. They apparently tried to make Hillary look older so she could do both, and it didn't work. It's very difficult to pull that off. We had a quick Zoom, and everyone seemed so lovely and happy. They sent me little bits of the show. I thought it's exactly what it should be. I got out to LA. The next day, I went to Paramount, my favorite lot, and we filmed for a day. I did 10 episodes in one day, the wraparounds. They said, "Do you know what? We're actually going to put you on camera." I thought I should take this as a compliment. "And you're going to be in season 2? Oh, it's the greatest gig. I fly in, work for 2 days, and I'm done. One wardrobe change. I didn't think about that when I chose it. If this goes for 10 years, I'm in this outfit for 10 years. That's funny. What have you been doing during the pandemic? I voted and I lost my health insurance. I'm a true American. What are you interested in doing that you haven't done as an actor? I'd like to do my own sitcom. I think that would be a lot of fun with an audience, playing a woman my own age. I have a very specific idea of what I want to do. Oh, I would love that. Wouldn't you love to see her in a sitcom? I know I would. I would love it. How far along is it? It's just in my head. I'm fascinated about what happens to women once they reach the top of their profession. You have all this life experience and nobody's listening, and you've really got something to say. Am I being too cryptic? No, I understand. Does it feel like Samantha is still with you? Oh, yes, because parts of her are with me. I played her and I loved her. I felt ultimately protective of her. I felt that way with Rhoda on the Mary Tyler Moore show. I just loved her so much. Samantha was kind of the Rhoda of Sex in the City in her own way, but Rhoda got her own spin-off. People want more Samantha. What a great compliment. I've played so many different kinds of characters. You think, why that character? Why then? It was a time coming out of AIDS and making sex positive again. There were so many parallels of me growing as an actor, and that character, I would never want to look back on that with anything other than pride. That I did that it existed. I don't know how I did it sometimes because it was really scary, especially when I started dating. My husband and I broke up in 2004. That was really different for me. What was scary about it? I felt like it was a show about single women. I felt like I was now cast as a cougar, which became not as positive as other aspects. People say you coined it. I didn't feel like that was part of my character. There was never a desperation, and it was always on her terms, which I loved. That was a bit of an adjustment, suddenly being single. I think when you become that recognizable for a very specific kind of character and you go out into the real world, those images, that collective consciousness we all share. Oh, can you imagine? So I think what she's saying here is that the men she was dating thought that she was like that character and that she was super easy and, whorish. And that would be very difficult because clearly she's not. She calls herself a serial monogamist with long-term relationships. Were there ever discussions about you returning as Samantha on And Just Like That? I was never asked to be part of the reboot. I made my feelings clear after the possible third movie, so I found out about it like everybody else did on social media. How did you feel? I was like, ooh, how's that going to work? You said it, not me. You read the script to the third movie in which Big was supposed to die. The series is basically the third movie. That's how creative it was. Oh, nice dig, Kim. If there had been a third movie, Samantha's storyline involved her getting unwanted pictures from Brady. Cattrall says, it's heartbreaking. What would you have liked Samantha to do? And Cattrall says, why can't Samantha, who owns her PR company, maybe she had to sell it because of financial woes. 2008 was tough. Some people are still recovering. She had to sell it to some guy who's wearing a hoodie, and that's the dilemma she has. I mean, that's a scenario that was kind of off the top of one of my reps' heads, and I thought, that's a great idea. That's a conflict. Instead of an underage boys You trailed off before finishing that sentence. So in the third movie, you didn't feel like Samantha was progressing. That's an understatement, said Cattrall. How would you describe it? I would have preferred for all of us to have some kind of event to warrant a third film. That didn't happen, but also I was ready, and this is exactly what I wished for, to be in different places, playing different characters, because I'm a character actress. And as difficult as it was, and as scary as it is to stand up and not be bullied by the press or the fans or whomever, to just say, I'm good. I'm on this track. It was so great working with you. I so enjoyed it, but I'm over here. People have been wanting to hear from you about Samantha. Cattrall says, I haven't deserted anybody. Can you imagine going back to a job you did 25 years ago? And the job didn't get easier, it got more complicated in the sense of how are you going to progress with these characters? Everything has to grow or it dies. I felt that when the series ended, I thought that's smart. We're not repeating ourselves. And then the movie to end all the loose ends, and then there's another movie, and then there's another movie. How did you feel after the second movie? Everything in me went, I'm done. Sarah Jessica has said that if you decided to play Samantha again, she wouldn't be okay with that. Did that hurt your feelings? I don't think I read it, said Cattrall. She said there was too much that happened publicly between the two of you. Kim says, well, it would never happen anyway, so nobody has to worry about that. Have you watched And Just Like That? Cattrall said, I certainly heard about it, and I've come to the conclusion that really the greatest compliment I could ever have as an actor is to be missed. So you haven't seen any of it? No. Can I talk a little about it? Sure. One of the storylines that they introduced had Carrie and Samantha fighting because Samantha got mad that Carrie stopped paying her to be Carrie's publicist. Oh, yes, said Cattrall. I heard this. Well, that feels different than the Samantha that I played. In the original Sex and the City, Samantha had volunteered to do Carrie's publicity for free. Some fans noticed that it didn't track. Cattrall said, yeah, that's so strange. A world that I know is so much about that now I don't. Wait, a world that I know so much about that now I don't. Okay, that makes more sense. And the show still continues to refer to Samantha because we see the texts that she sends Carrie from London. Cattrall says, oh yes, also under the heading of being missed. So good. How does it feel that they are continuing the character without you? Cattrall says, it's odd, isn't it? I don't know how to feel about it. It's so finite for me, so it doesn't continue. I think I would ponder it more if I didn't have something like Queer as Folk or How I Met Your Father. That's kind of where I'm centered around. This feels like an echo of the past. Other than the really wonderful feeling of it's rare in my business, people wanting more, especially at 65. That feels powerful, that I've left something behind that I'm so proud of. I loved her. I loved her so, so much. It's tough competition. The original show is in all of our imaginations, but for me, it feels clean. The break does? Yeah, it was years ago. It was 2017 when all this was happening. I just thought to myself, no, this is right, and you can't go against that feeling. I don't ever want to be on a set and not want to be there. Is it true you originally turned down the role of Samantha? I turned it down 3 times. I didn't think I could do it. At 42, I really didn't think I could pull it off. I finally said, you're making a mistake here. We did the pilot. It was good, but it wasn't there. And then it started to find its way. I realized, because I'd never done a series before, the more you play the character like in theater, the more you add to it and change. I remember one day a laugh came out and I thought, holy shit, that's great. Sam just got a new laugh. You sound so different from Samantha. How did you find her voice? Voice is always a huge avenue for me to explore and always has been. I saw her as a Noelle Coward. I saw her in a restoration comedy. The ladies used to use their fans and they would be very leading. They could be theatrical. It was a bitch because I had to know my lines backwards and forwards because she had already been there and done all those things. She was always talking from the mount. The voice got more and more pronounced as the seasons got on. I always wanted to make it as honest as possible, but also make it Samantha. I remember saying to a girlfriend of mine, oh shit, I have to fall on the bed again. How am I going to do it this time? Am I going to sing opera? How am I going to make it unique? That's how much fun I was having with it. And then that was dampened. It was time to move on. Were you ever friends with your Sex and the City co-stars, or was it always contentious? I guess it's how you define friends. I think we were colleagues. My colleagues aren't my friends. It was professional. With the texting on and just like that, some of us were still holding out hope that you'd return to Samantha one day. The thing about doing a show like Sex and the City, I think Darren got it right with Emily in Paris. It's a young show. It's about young ideals. It's about discovery. I think the original show was really amazing, but that was a different time. So it's a definite no. That's a no. It's powerful to say no. And that's the end of that. And I thought that was pretty good. What do you guys think about that article and about that interview? I think she was absolutely right to turn it down. And I'm glad that she did. We may all miss her, but certainly the way that she was treated wasn't so good. Let me know in the comments below what you thought. Don't forget to check out the merch store for all the fabulous new stuff that's there. Isn't happy hour anytime? T-shirts, mugs, mega pints, you name it, it's there. There's also the and I survived and just like that with YouTube group therapy, wine coolers. There's stickers. There's all kinds of stuff. So check it out, and I'll talk to you soon.